It started off as the WNBA's most anticipated rookie season. However, Caitlin Clark's debut became much darker rather than a coronation. The league thought she would save the day, a new generation's face of women's basketball. However, the year that followed was marked by injuries, constant pressure, and rumors that the WNBA itself wasn't ready to manage the path to its biggest star. Every move she made on the court affected millions of people, and every failure sent shockwaves across living rooms and stadiums. It was no longer simply basketball. This was a matter of survival. Clark's path was unique from the beginning. Before she ever dribbled her first WNBA ball, the hype machine had made her a living legend. Broadcast partnerships, ticket sales, and endorsements all depended on her genius. However, spectators were treated to a tragic turn of events in place of fireworks. Following one injury after another, a league yearning for a new era found itself in a precarious position, relying on the health of a player who was unable to remain on the court. And underneath Clark's grin, a raging tempest of weariness, uncertainty, and suffering. Highlight reels were anticipated by fans. They received heartache instead. Excitement was in the air every time Caitlin Clark suited up. Would this be the night she took back control? However, her body repeatedly let her down. She missed games for the first time in her career because of an injury that was unprecedented for the WNBA and for her personally. The fairy tale had been transformed into a warning, and the inquiry became louder with each missed game. Without her, could the league even exist? Her inaugural season was not about victories and defeats on the court. It concerned a young lady who was made to undergo the intolerable demands of a whole sport. In addition to being physically punished by the league's most aggressive defenders, Clark had also had to face the heartbreaking fact that her presence was crucial to the WNBA's operations. She was a product, not simply a novice. Additionally, the whole system trembles when the product breaks. No one wanted to speak the grim reality out. Caitlin Clark, however, did, and the storm really started at that point. She gave hints about the harsh rehabilitation, the continual push to return quickly, the behind-the-scenes conflicts, and the silent animosity from players who didn't want the league to focus on her. Nobody had expected this first season. Fans were left watching a star battle against her own body, her own league, and the expectations of a whole country, rather than enjoying her ascent. The season wasn't all that. Everything would alter as a result of the fire trial. The injury timetable was unrelenting. They were all undermining Clark's hopes of a flawless start. She was forced out for the first time in her life, in May due to a quad strain. She was sobbing uncontrollably after suffering a groin strain due to a nasty rain injury. And in July, disaster struck once again, just when she believed the worst was over. Her fledgling career was scarred by each injury. However, when combined, they created something far worse. A story of vulnerability that the protagonist was unable to weave. These weren't just wounds for Clark. They were struggles against who she was. The Iron Woman, the competitor who never sat and never gave up, had always been her. In college, it was impossible to miss a game. But in this case, she had to watch from the sidelines while her comrades battled without her. It was simultaneously upsetting, embarrassing, and frustrating. Her body gave out beneath the weight of the moment she had prepared for her whole life. And every second was being watched by the globe. Her harsh expressions were captured on video. The crowd saw the cries. With each failure, ESPN headlines shouted, "Caitlin Clark has evolved beyond her athletic career." She was a sight to see. Every injury turned into a national news item that was examined and discussed by both fans and experts. Would her career be characterized by her physical weakness, or would she return stronger? People started asking a question that was previously unimaginable for the first time. Was Caitlin Clark meant to be a WNBA player? That skepticism turned into a kind of harm in and of itself. The worst thing was that every dribble, drive, and jump shot was plagued with the fear of rain injury, even when she retaliated on the court. Never knowing when the anguish would recur, she was playing basketball with a ticking time bomb attached to her legs. The expectations, however, remained constant. Greatness was sought by fans. Ratings were required by networks. The WNBA called for redemption. She had stopped playing for herself. The strain was oppressive since she was representing a whole league. She fought a hard physical war, but she almost broke from the mental toll. In rare, open moments, Caitlin acknowledged that the pain wasn't the most difficult aspect. The dread was the cause. Fear of losing admirers. Dread that the excitement would fade. Fear of being forgotten. She told Sue Bird that she felt caught between the demands of the league and the limitations of her body. She was gripped by that strain, which dragged her into a vicious loop of running back, losing it again, and again encountering the same nightmare. Nevertheless, she continued to battle. The strain she carried cannot be overstated. Clark has never missed a game in college because of an injury. Her greatest strength was her resilience. However, she was thrown into a season in the WNBA that was unlike any she had ever experienced in terms of intensity, lack of training camp, and transition time. The opponents weren't the only ones. It was the system itself. Her physique wasn't prepared. However, waiting was not an option for the league. Thus, she played and again suffered the price. Imagine being aware that every time you play, millions of people are watching, not only for fun, but also for the league's continued existence. Caitlin Clark had to deal with it. She acknowledged that since they paid to see her, she felt compelled to perform. She was afraid of disappointing them. The underlying reality, however, was that the WNBA's momentum was being killed by her absence. Attendance at every game she missed fell. Without her, the ratings plummeted every night. She was more than simply hurt. On shaky legs, she bore the burden of an empire. The tale was brutally detailed by the data. Clark made the Indiana Fever games a must-watch television program. When she faced the Chicago Sky, more than 2.5 million people watched. Those figures dropped to only 1.5 million without her. The similar tendency was seen in attendance. Fans wanted more than simply women's basketball, they wanted Caitlin Clark. Additionally, arenas lost their vigor like a deflated balloon when she wasn't there. She had been the foundation of the league, and everything fell apart when that back gave out. The record of the Fever reflected the issue. They hovered barely below 0.50 with Clark, a commendable accomplishment for a new team. They fell into mediocrity without her. Caitlin was obviously irreplaceable, not merely valued. If one player had the power to create or destroy the WNBA, that reliance scared the league. What was said about his foundation by that? More significantly, what would occur if the athlete was unable to endure the penalty any longer? The future of the league was in jeopardy, and it was deteriorating quickly. Clark's response to Sue Bird's question about how she managed that duty demonstrated how overwhelming the load had become. She acknowledged knowing the figures. Without her, she realized the league was in dire straits. She continued to try to persuade herself to have patience and get well, but the reality was obvious. She felt stuck, torn between her body's resistance to cooperation, the league's urgency, and her competitive spirit. More destructive than any opponent on the floor was that internal conflict. Her mother's message was necessary to change her viewpoint. Her mother sent her a heartbreaking text after her most recent failure. To everyone else, you have contributed so much. It's time to look for yourself now. For the first time, Clark understood she couldn't continue to put the league's requirements before of her own health. She had to make her own decision. This realization reframed her first season as a struggle for survival on her own terms rather than as a failure. However, scandals sprang out even as she attempted to recover. Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA as a dominant talent, but faced relentless physical pressure and poor officiating, which exposed both her vulnerabilities and the league's structural flaws. When she openly criticized referees, fans and players rallied behind her, transforming her from a struggling rookie into a symbol of truth and accountability. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham rose not through stats, but by controlling the media narrative, becoming the league's most talked-about figure. The season revealed that star power depends as much on personality, drama, and cultural influence as on skill. The question remains, can Clark reclaim dominance, or has the league changed beyond her?